Welcome everyone to the fourth session in the St John's College webinar series. This session is study skills and supercurricular activities. So an overview of what we're going to cover in today's session. We're going to think first of all how we study, how we learn, how we revise. And then we're going to think about how we can tailor that independent learning, that independent study and revision to learning styles that might suit us. Then we're going to look at what exactly supercurricular activities actually are and how you'd go about engaging in them. And then we're going to look at how you would integrate those supercurricular activities into your personal statement. And then finally, something quite fun that I'm very much looking forward to, we're going to be practicing some supercurricular discussion. More on that later. I have some notes. I've done my homework for this. Okay, let's get going. So first of all, I've got a question that I want you to think about, and then if you want to, you can share the answer in the chat. So the first topic that we're going to look at is transitioning from school to university. So in terms of what you're studying and how you're studying. So I want you to think about this question. In terms of studying at university, what opportunities and what challenges are you expecting? So if you can pop your ideas in the chat box, that would be great. It's really interesting. I've not actually asked you to label your comment as an opportunity or a challenge. And that's kind of the point with a lot of them. Some of them can be both. So we had the first answer that I can see coming in was independence. I'd say that's both a challenge and an opportunity. So that's a really interesting start. Heavy workload, not a lot of free time. It's an interesting one. I would like the person who said not a lot of free time to expand on that. What do they mean by that? More opportunity to choose. That's also one that I want to hear more from. So what do you mean by more opportunity to choose? We have new surroundings. Yes, absolutely. An environmental change. Yeah. Time management. Being away from home, yes. That is often some experience for university students that's seen as sort of like the norm, but it's not always everyone's experience of university of being away from home, but it is for a lot of those undergraduate students the first time that they will have been living on their own. Time, organisation, more essays and more independent study. Oh, thanks, Kate. Yeah. More independent research. Thank you, Hamna. Making friends, that's a nice one. Opportunities to join societies, yes. Increase in workload and the difficulty, yeah, so more challenging in terms of academic level of detail. Exciting new material, that's a really good one. Less teacher-led, but with more freedom to study what you love. Arthur, I really like that answer. I think that sums it up really well. Yeah, I think lots of your time will be used to study and do work instead of having fun and being out all the time. Oh, that's a shame. If you saw our student Q&A, which was our second session back in February, which seems an age ago now, I hope you'll get a different impression from what the students were telling you. You can always watch that on the YouTube channel, so I can always link that to you if you send me an email, if you didn't manage to see that one. Just looking at more responses now. Engaging with more people with similar interests, yes. Yeah, so I think higher workload, the opportunity to study what you love in greater detail, that's also what I'm seeing as well. Self-motivation, that's a really nice one. Yeah, that's a challenge, but within it, there's an opportunity. Excellent. So many responses. I'm sorry I haven't been able to read all of them. Engaging with people with so many different interests. Yes, definitely. I'd say that's particularly true when you're in a collegiate university like Cambridge, because the people that you're living with, that you're socializing with, that you're eating your lunch next to, that you're just bumping into around college, they're studying loads of different things. So that's really interesting. So you don't feel like you're in your subject bubble all the time. Okay, so some great responses there. Thank you so much, everyone. So I've got some here that you might have thought of, and I think we covered most of them actually in the ones I was reading from the chat. So independence, that was a key theme. It's a crucial part of university study. Studying for an undergraduate degree is a great way to develop transferable skills. So I think we had managing your time, organizing, also self-motivation is a really interesting one that I haven't listed there, but I should have done. And then also, I'm not sure if I saw this, but I did see something about essays. So perhaps this was along the same lines, written and verbal communication. That's another transferable skill that an undergraduate degree offers you the chance to develop. And then we had definitely more academic freedom. So exploring the topics that you love, the questions that you find interesting in greater depth, we definitely had that. Coming up with your own answers and engaging in discussions. I think I saw someone mention supervisions and tutorials, which are the Cambridge and Oxford, respectively. I've forgotten which way I said them. Supervisions at Cambridge, tutorials at Oxford. There we go. They're the small group discussion-based teaching and learning that you'll have at those universities. So yeah, engaging in discussions, but also in other courses and other universities, you'll have things like seminars where they're a little bit larger, but you'll be engaging in the same sorts of discussion as well. Responding to feedback and challenges to an idea or your way of answering something. So that comes with all of this idea of academic freedom. That's, you know, exploring all those topics in more detail, coming up with your own answers. That in itself also links right back to independence as well. So independent study, I think, is a nice overview of everything, an overarching answer there when we're thinking about the challenges and the opportunities. What I've got for you on the bottom of the slide here, and when I send the slides around, you'll have this as a hyperlink. This is something called CAM guides. I'm just interested if anyone has come across this before. Has anyone used CAM guides before? Someone's saying they've seen it, a couple of people saying no. Okay, I will click through. There we go. Oh wow, that was quick. So this is what you'll come to when you go onto CAM guides. You don't need a login for this. It was created by the University of Cambridge, the libraries here in the university. So that's why it's called CAM guides, but you don't need a Cambridge student login or anything like that. Some really good sections. I'm going to go to this one. What academic skills will I develop? And then what you've got here is you've just got loads of different types of academic skills, right? Critical reading, I'll go on that one. You've got some videos, you've got some guided resources. It's really useful. I still use this. I find it very helpful. And I'm always recommending it to people as well. So definitely have a look at CAM guides. There's lots more there that you can browse in your own time, but in the interests of our time this evening, I will move on to the next slide, which is all about effective learning and revision. So I've got two more questions for you to think about and respond to in the chat if you would like. What does effective learning or revision mean to me? So when you think of effective revision, like you've revised effectively, what does that actually mean? Can you qualify that for me? And then in a similar way, as in a related way, I mean, this question is asking you which techniques and methods of studying, of revising, of independent learning, which ones work for you? So if you want to pop your ideas and your thoughts in the chat, I think this can be a really useful way to share what works for you with other people. So straight away, we've got active recall. Yes, that's a really good one. I think I cover recall in the next slide, so that's a really good one. When your studies make you feel good, yeah, absolutely. We often say this, and I think I will say it later when we're talking about supercurriculars. You know that you're sort of on the right track with your studying and you're delving deeper into topics when you have that genuine interest, you know, when it doesn't feel like a chore. Flashcards, yes, flashcards are linked with active recall, definitely. Past papers, yeah, so practicing the exam questions in timed conditions. That repetition, recall, yes, practice questions, past papers, excellent. Not just memorizing, but also understanding. Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Yes, so answering questions and identifying errors to then solve them. So something that you've missed out of I don't know, a 10 marker or something, when you get your feedback back from a mock exam or something like that, or a practice question, and actually not just saying, oh, okay, I didn't get that, and then moving on, but going back and thinking, how would I do it differently this next time? Do I need to do a better plan? Do I need to give myself more time in the exam? So yeah, all of those things are excellent. So mind maps, yes. Applying knowledge, absolutely. So applying what you know to new questions, unfamiliar problems. Not only am I able to answer the questions, in tests, but you're also able to understand what you're doing at each step. Absolutely. So you're not just sort of regurgitating what you've memorized, you're actually actively solving the problem or answering the question, because it comes from that grasp of it, that understanding. Brilliant. These are some excellent responses to these questions. Thank you, everyone. A memory palace, yeah, that's a really interesting. So when I come on to the next slide, that'll be it within one of the boxes of the types of learning, the types of revision, the learning styles, if you will. Reinforcing your existing knowledge, absolutely, thank you. Explaining the topic to someone else, yeah, definitely. That's the age-old saying, isn't it? You don't actually know someone until you can explain it or teach it to someone else. Excellent. Okay, I think I've seen a lot of really good responses that cover pretty much everything that we'll have on in these next slides. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to go through now different types of learning styles. So a lot of those examples of effective revision that you gave in the chat relate to these categories. So we had definitely mind maps and visual. I guess you could also think of, I'm not sure if I have spatial in here, but visual and spatial would kind of be the mind palace, memory palace one as well. So visual, you prefer to use pictures, diagrams, and physical space. There we go. Yeah, so sort of spatial is included in that, I guess. Auditory, so you prefer using audio, sounds, or rhythms to help you learn. So maybe I tried this when I was in your position, when I was studying at school, recording myself talking about something and then listening to it later, sort of helping me be familiar with the topics, the key facts, things like that. It's a nice break from reading or writing, using all of your senses. Verbal, so you prefer to use words rather than writing down. So a lot of people were saying that they sort of were writing out everything that they knew. Also discussing with other people, that comes up in another box actually. So kinesthetic here, so using your hands or your body or like physical touch, like something more tangible to help you learn. So something I remember doing was thinking if I could think of like all of my case studies for geography, let's say, and I could think of sort of five effects, and so I would count them on my fingers, things like that. Logical, so if you use reasoning, systems, sequences, patterns, so linking things together in that sort of logical way. Social, so I think we had this, discussing it, certainly explaining it to someone else, with your friends, with your peer group, testing one another. You like to do things on your own, that's also another learning style that's completely valid, using self-studying techniques. So this sort of like cover and recall, testing yourself, I think came up in the chat a fair bit. And probably a lot of you here will do a mixture of all of those things. I mean, you were giving me lots of examples, each of you, in the chat, and I'd say probably you would be using a lot of different learning styles. So there isn't one way that I want to say is, oh, this is the best learning style. It's all very personal. It's all about what works for you. The only thing I would say at this stage is I would encourage you to try out different learning styles that you haven't tried before. Just try and see. And it might be that a certain combination works really well for you. Okay, so next I'm going to go over some self-reflection questions that you can ask yourself. So when you're revising and studying, I think a really important part of that effective study, that effective independent learning, is to do sort of like a check-in with yourself. So am I clear on what's being asked of me? Is it a past paper question, or is it a topic or a task? Does what I'm being asked right now to do, does this relate to any other topics or questions or problems that you've encountered before? So sort of making those connections. Do I need any support or help? Is there a term in here? Is there a particular part of the question or the topic that I'm not 100% sure of, full stop? I'm not sure about it. How do I go and get that help to fill in that gap, as it were? Do I need to ask my friend? Do I remember that they said they had some really good notes or a really good explanation of it? Do I need to ask my teacher? Do I go and use, I don't know, maybe ChatGPT to sort of summarize it in a really short way? There's loads of tools now that you could use to sort of get support when you're facing those knowledge gaps. You know, is it going back to the textbook, or is it having someone explain it to you in a different way? It could be both. How would you explain this thing to someone else, this question, this topic, task? So we definitely had that earlier, didn't we? Excellent. So they're I think we covered all of those already. So I'm literally saying nothing new to you all, which is good, which is what we want. So on my next slide, I have some top tips, but like I say, I don't think you need me to teach you anything new here. So in terms of when you're taking in the information, I'd say doing it in manageable chunks would be a really effective way. You make sure that you're actively reading, watching, listening, without distractions, in manageable chunks. It's a really nice tip to start with. We've already had lots of people saying that they use recall, so reviewing and reflecting on the material regularly. I think that's a really crucial one, that regular repeated recall. Scheduling your studies. So sometimes you might find it helpful to make a revision timetable, make a schedule and track your progress. And be kind to yourself. If you don't, just like when we've got to-do lists in a day and we don't get everything done, take that on board as a learning lesson. A learning lesson, that's tautologist, sorry. Take that on board as a lesson. It's something that you can learn from, right? If you are finding that you're struggling to complete everything that you've set out for yourself in your revision schedule, in your learning timetable, whatever it may be, think about why that might be. So it's not about tracking your progress just to sort of compete with yourself in that way. It's about thinking what's actually working and what's not. Related is work out individual realistic goals. So use those SMART goals, figure out what works for you. Everyone works and revises and at a different pace, and they learn and study in a different way. So it's all about what works for you. When you're practicing for the exam, work on past paper questions in timed conditions. So we definitely had a lot of people saying that they did this. And familiarize yourself with the mark scheme. So really, I remember this, like having to look at the mark scheme and thinking, okay, what do they want? What is the question asking me? That's a really good way of working through it. And then you can use just the past paper and then almost mark your own past paper or ask someone else to mark it for you. So using both the past paper questions and the mark schemes where they're available is really helpful. Reviewing those mocks and tests and following up on the feedback and comments. We definitely had this in the chat, so that was excellent. Making sure that you know where you went wrong in a question and how you would answer that differently and get better marks next time. That's essentially what that means there. And then finally, but most importantly, looking after yourself. So taking regular active breaks away from your desk, away from the place where you study, away from the screen if you're using your computer or device to study. That's really, really vital. And speaking to your friends and teachers if you're having any questions, any worries at all. Make sure that you keep those lines of communication open with the people in your life that are your supporters. Okay. This is the second half. So we've done study skills, and now we're going to come to supercurriculars. So what is supercurricular engagement, or what is subject enrichment? Does anyone want to pop an answer in the chat? What do I mean by supercurricular? Oh, excellent. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. They're coming in thick and fast. I can't keep up. Oh my gosh. Oh, I've accidentally clicked on the slide, but I'll just read a few of the responses in the chat. So something that develops and furthers your understanding of a topic. Yeah, exactly. Super meaning beyond there. Independent study, exactly. Researching, exploring around your subject, going beyond the syllabus, exactly. Doing Olympiad, so competitions. That's a really good one. Yeah, maths Olympiad, perfect. Reading beyond the curriculum, yes. Essay competition, excellent. This is great. I don't think you need my slides, everyone. This is great. MOOCs, yep, that's great. Absolutely. So it's engaging beyond what you sort of have as within your parameters, within the curriculum, the syllabus. So it's building on, enhancing what you're learning in school, and you're wanting to deepen and broaden your understanding of key concepts and questions. So you've got to do this with a purpose, right? You're delving deeper, not just for the sake of it, but you're delving deeper because you want to find out more, and you can see that you're finding out more as well. So you're satisfying your curiosity, but then you're also piquing it and you're carrying on. So you're sort of finding out more and then realizing that the amount that you don't know is really large, and that's exciting. So that's what supercurricular engagement is all about. And it's going to be completely unique to you. So it's whatever you find most interesting. I can share with you in the wrap-up email following this session the Supercurricular suggestions document from the University of Cambridge. And there are lots of other resource hubs and repositories of supercurricular activities and examples of things you can do. But just like on the next slide, where I've got some examples, I'll come to the next slide in a second, where I've got some examples, these are just that. They are just examples, they're just suggestions. So it's not a case that we have like this prescribed reading list. There are lots of ways to do this supercurricular engagement. I'd say a good top tip is that you explore widely, you really cast the supercurricular net widely, but you are focused. So like I was saying before about having that purpose to it, make sure that you're focused on quality over quantity. And I'll come to that in the next slide, I believe. Oh, in the slide afterwards. So what counts? We've already had a lot in the chat that covers all of this. So we definitely had competitions like essay competitions and the Olympiads, the Maths Olympiads. So other things as well, podcasts, documentaries, as well as things like news articles, magazines and journals. And I've got there again, those open access research. So that's how you would find those academic journals and articles. But also YouTube video essays and courses. We definitely had someone mention those massive online open courses like FutureLearn, for instance. That's a provider of MOOCs. So it's more than just books, and lots of it is free to access if you have an internet connection, if you can get online. So I've got some examples here for you. So I've got the New Scientist, Nature Magazine, History Today. These are examples of academic magazines. They do a really good job of making the current discussions, the current debates, the current discoveries in whatever subject area it is, really accessible to someone that's not, already a researcher in that field. HE Plus there is a really good resource. You don't need a login to access the tasks and suggested reading and documentaries and everything like that they have linked in there. So definitely have a look at HE Plus. What else have I got there? I've got Crash Course, which is a series on YouTube. And then I've also got Kurzgesagt, which is a YouTube channel as well that has really lovely, beautifully illustrated videos about a whole host of different topics. So definitely want to check out if you are not already familiar. And then there's some podcasts on there like TED Talks. And I've got some ones that are related specifically to maths, some resources that are maths specific, so underground mathematics, Enrich, and I Want to Study Engineering as well, so mathematical based sciences there as well. So I will move on now to this, which is the semi-official announcement of our poster competition for this year. So this is open for Year 12 students in the UK currently. What it is, I'll click on the hyperlink. There we go, that worked well last time. Let's hope it works well again. Perfect. So if you go onto the web page, and this will be linked in the slides, and you can also find it by just going on the Open Days and Events page on the college website. So what this is, this poster competition, it's a chance for you to consolidate all of your supercurricular engagement, all of that subject enrichment that you've been doing. It's a chance for you to consolidate it and submit it for academics to give you feedback on it. So it's a really excellent opportunity. So what we ask you to do, if you're entering into this competition, you need to submit 3 different elements. So the first one is going to be a poster, hence the title, poster competition. So it's an academic research poster. And then it will be an accompanying video, a 3-minute short video of you presenting your poster effectively, sort of giving an overview of your project. What did you find out when you were doing this academic research? And then if your references, your bibliography, if that's not already included on your poster itself, then you would need to submit a separate bibliography. The deadline is in August, so there's plenty of time for this. But if you're thinking about doing something like this, some sort of competition, then definitely have a think about it at this stage. I like to launch it at this time of year because it gives you sort of plenty of time to work on your project, work on your poster. So the submissions will all be judged by academics at St John's, and there are also prizes that you can win. So the prizes come in the form of national book tokens, and you might get the best overall. So you might be the overall winner. You might get best research, best presentation, or best poster. And then on this competition webpage as well, I've put some resources, some advice, some tips. There's lots here. There's lots of videos. There's lots of things that are linked, like an example poster, an example video presentation. And then some helpful resources at the bottom. So there we go. There's the Supercurricular suggestions document I was talking about. And then there's some open access research repositories of research articles, open access research platforms and search engines, all of that lovely stuff. I've had some questions in the chat. This is, you could do primary research. You could do your own research. You could, sort of have your own experiment where you collected data in whatever form that might be, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, whatever that data might be. You could do that and talk about that in your project, yes, but you could also focus purely on secondary research. So sort of an overview of what's out there. And what I would say with that, what you're doing with the primary research is you're doing something new, right? You're asking a specific question, and you're answering it by collecting the data in whatever means that data is. So what we're not looking for is you to just do a sort of literature review, an overview of the literature. That's not an academic research project. As you'll see from the resources on the page, you'll get a really good idea of the sorts of questions that these poster projects can answer. Edwin, I think so, but could you get in touch with me, because I just need to check that. Is this for humanities mainly? No, but not by any means at all. This is any subject at all. What I didn't mention, and I should have done, is that it is for any subject area, any topic, but what we do ask submissions to be related to is the theme of the competition each year. So in the past, we've had the theme be green. Last year was cycle. And this year, the theme is dark. So your submission, your poster, your project, it has to be related to that theme. But I really would encourage you to be quite creative with this and how you interpret that theme. Okay, so I'm going to move back to my slides. That was just a little announcement there of the poster competition that has launched this week. Okay, so why would you make supercurriculars or subject exploration a habit? Can I have in the chat any thoughts on this? Why would you bother to do this? I've just seen a couple questions before that I didn't answer, sorry. We don't have any competitions for year 10 students, just to answer that question, but definitely have a look at the events listing page on the Cambridge website, because I believe, I'm not sure whether the deadline has passed or not, but I believe that the sociology department have a photography competition with the theme of inequality, I believe. So there definitely are, just within Cambridge of what I'm aware of, but also elsewhere, there definitely will be other competitions that you can join if you're not in year 12 at this point. And yes, there will be a recording of this session. Okay, so we've had responses to why would you bother to do this? Why would you make subject enrichment, supercurricular exploration? Why would you do this? And why would you make it a habit? I like this. I'm not surprised when you actually get to university and you do this sort of thing, this independent research of your topic. Exactly. It's a taster of university level study, and it gives you the skills that that you'll need to be a university student, because it interests you and because you enjoy it. Absolutely, it's fun. I think that is a reason in itself, because you are interested by it, and that's always a reason to do something, isn't it? Getting that deeper understanding of a topic, absolutely. To see if you like it enough to go on and do that course at university, absolutely, yeah. It helps you with your choices, your university course choices, which was the topic of the previous webinar last month. It demonstrates genuine interest, yes. Absolutely. So that will come in handy when you're applying for university, and universities really want to see that you can evidence your, quote, passion for the subject, because you've got to really show that interest rather than just say that you have it. So it's what I like to call informed enthusiasm. That's what you're demonstrating. Absolutely. There's some brilliant responses here. Thank you, everyone. Broaden your understanding and making inter-subject connections. I really like that. Yes, that will come in handy when we're doing the task later, that approach. To know what you actually enjoy within the subject, absolutely, because you're not going to like everything under the umbrella of biology. Let's say there are going to be certain topics, certain areas, certain questions that really interest you, so it's really good to actually define those and know in yourself what you like within that subject as it's broadly defined. Brilliant. This is excellent. Thank you so much for everyone's responses. I'm sorry I'm not able to read them all out. Improves your grasp of current subjects. Absolutely. I think that's my first one. I've got a mind reader in the audience. Amazing. So it aids where you are right now. So it aids your current revision efforts, your current studies. So it helps you understand your subjects at a deeper level. And we had this as well, didn't we? Expands your areas of interest. So you find out more, you discover a lot. That is in itself enjoyable. It supports your university application. So this ties in with the next one, helping you figure out what you can study at university. We had both of these in the chat, so that's excellent. It helps you with your course decisions, and it also helps you because what you're doing in terms of your subject enrichment, you can use that to put that in your personal statement as well. And we already had this as well, taster of university level study. So supervisions and tutorials in particular, because those small group discussion-based teaching and learning methods, they really allow you to delve deeper in preparation for the supervision or tutorial, but also in the actual supervision or tutorial itself. So how do you go about exploring your subject? What I'm going to put on the slide next is a series of steps. Good. They say 1 to 6. Sometimes my slides mess up and it just says 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So these steps are just an example, a guidance that you can follow if you want to do this subject exploration on your own. So first of all, you would be finding a resource, whether it's a podcast episode, documentary, a journal article, something like that. So that's what I mean by search to find a resource. You'd use research repositories, open access research search indices, as we saw on the poster competition webpage. You'd use the back of a book, good old-fashioned book index. You'd also use things like the HE Plus website, which is a hub of resources, and University College Oxford have a great resource hub as well. Their Super-Curricular resources, really, really great sort of compilation of different resources as well. And you'd use in those search engines, in those different repositories, you'd use categories and keywords to help you find what you're looking for. I guess you could also use ChatGPT. I'm really trying to explore more and think about how I can use ChatGPT in my own life. So I think that's a great tool, isn't it, to sort of help you distill a lot of information online. You can also ask real people as well as ChatGPT for recommendations. So your teachers, people that you know that are studying the subject, maybe at university or have studied it in the past, or maybe just friends that are interested in the same sorts of things as you are. Evaluating. So that's the second step. And that's what happens when you get this resource, when you find the article. Let's say it's an article just for the sake of argument. Why was that article written? Does it cite its evidence and arguments? Can you make sure that it's a legit article in that sense? And also thinking about why it was written and who wrote it, and thinking about the context of that can lead in itself to really interesting questions. So definitely this is an important point. It might seem like an obvious one, but it can actually branch out into its own discussion as well. So the third one is summarizing. This is a really good one for what we were talking about before with the learning style of explaining it to someone else. So can you summarize the main points, the main arguments of, let's say it's an article, and what did you learn from it? What did you gain from it? And then the fourth step is reflecting and responding. So what questions are you left with having read this article, let's say? What are your opinions? Have you changed your previous opinion having read this article? If so, why? If not, why not? Were there any knowledge gaps, any new terms, any unfamiliar concepts? Can you go away and fill in those knowledge gaps? Can you find any alternative viewpoints or approaches? Was there something that they missed out from the discussion of whatever the question or the topic was, because they weren't thinking about it from a particular point through a particular lens, something like that? And then as you go on and do more of this sort of thing, you can then build connections and think about resources and how they relate to each other. So that one in italics, that line at the bottom there of step 4, that's what that relates to. And then step 5 is to discuss. So like we said before, consolidate what you've learned by explaining it to someone else, and share ideas, share those resources with your friends as well. And then finally, sort of looping back to the top, this should really be represented in a circle. Follow where the thread leads. So if in the article at the bottom there's some further reading, or one of the footnotes has a suggested reading to find out more about that topic that's not covered in the article, let's say, or the blog post or whatever it may be, then follow that thread. And follow your own natural curiosity as well. So the thread might have come from your own reflections and your own responses in step 4. So what questions are you left with? That might be where you go next. The key things here with subject exploration, what do you think? That's the whole point of it. You're not just doing the subject exploration just because it's good. You're doing it because you have some opinions about it. You have reflected on it. So it's all about what you think. Subject exploration, like I was saying before, is unique to you. It's very personal to you. And so that should be the driving factor through it as well. And then the second tip on the right there, keep a record of what you discover. So this is particularly useful. Well, I'd say it's a good skill generally, actually. Just sort of like we saw in CAM guides, note taking and sort of summarizing. These are key skills, right? These are really good transferable skills to have. But in terms of your university applications, keeping a record of what you've done in terms of your subject enrichment is going to be so helpful to you when you come to write your personal statement draft, because you can actually find which author, which podcast episode, which resource, whatever the resource was, you can find it again. So keep a log. It can be in the notes app of your phone. It can be, an actual physical journal, whatever works for you. But make sure that you're keeping a record of what you discover, and you can use it. These steps, you can use that as a framework to make those notes in your supercurricular journal or your log. So what you're doing when you're doing these things is you're demonstrating independent research and critical thinking. So you're practicing those key skills that mean that you're thinking essentially like a university student. What I've got next, and I think this right before we get to our task, which is just about on time, which is good. So this is an example paragraph template for a personal statement. This is by no means sort of a prescriptive, this is how you have to write your personal statement. That's not what I want to get across here. This is just an example for how you can talk about your subject enrichment in something like a personal statement, right? Which is a written document, if you will. So how I've set this example template out is I've walked through the journey that you're taking, the process of your subject exploration. So it's basically what those 1 to 6 steps look like if you then would transfer them, and what they become when they are in your personal statement. So it's the journey, it's the process that you were working through with those steps. So for example, you would talk about a particular resource, let's say it's a particular article, and you would say, it made me think a lot about, let's say, the impact of some issue, some event on whatever particular subject it is. This sparked my interest in maybe a more specific topic or maybe a related topic. And I explored further by, and then you talk about what research you did, what subject enrichment you did in whichever related topic or resource it might be. And then you would go on to say, I think that, or words to that effect, and you would discuss that resource critically. You would give your own opinions, and you'd think about what questions you have, and maybe that would help lead to the next paragraph in your personal statement. So you could reflect on a resource that's talking about something similar, so it's a similar topic, or maybe it's the same topic from a completely different perspective, or put in a completely different context. Maybe that's where you find the interest, thinking about it from a gender angle, for instance, as an example of that. So that's just an example paragraph template of how you would transform essentially what you've done in terms of your supercurricular engagement into something that looks more like a personal statement paragraph. Okay, this is what I've been looking forward to. So daily supercurriculars. What I mean by this is thinking about what happened on this day. So where are we? 27th of April. And how we can supercurricularify them, i.e. how we can ask those reflective questions, how we can think about our own subject interests and apply them to these events. So we're going to be looking at 4 events that happened on this day in history. And for each event, we're going to think, okay, how would I, with whatever my subject interest is, whether you're more of a sciences person, social sciences, humanities, whatever it may be, how would you approach that event? What questions would your subject, someone who's researching in your academic area perhaps, what questions would they have? And then the second thing we're going to think about for each event is, where would you go next? So what questions or what resources or sources would you need in order to find out more about whatever the event is, whatever questions it throws up, whatever discussions it creates. So that's what we're going to be thinking about. So how would you discuss it from a subject angle, and where would you go next with it? So my first one that I've found after trawling the internet, on the 27th of April, in 1828, the London Zoo opened in Regent's Park. So I've got my notes here, as I was saying before. I have done my homework for this, so I've got some notes that I can give you some little bit more information about this as we discuss it. But has anyone got any initial thoughts in terms of, for your own subject perspective, how might you sort of pitch into this discussion? What would you say if this was something that you were discussing? What would your subject angle be? Ruben, yes, thinking about it from a post-colonial angle, absolutely. So you would assume that the animals were taken from colonies, the British colonies of the British Empire. The welfare of the animals, yeah, absolutely. I've got written down here the ethics, ? Ethics of zoos, yes. Discussing how animal ethics have changed over time, exactly. So adding in that little extra step of a temporal context, brilliant. Yeah, so taking it back to like zoology, thinking about biological sciences, definitely. The evolution of animals and maybe the role that a zoo at this time would have played in that. So something like, yeah, Darwin's work, Darwin's research. Oh, that's really interesting. Materials for the cages in the zoo itself. Really interesting. I had not thought of that. Yeah, so the helping conserve, it's all about conservation often of different species, certainly if they're endangered, absolutely. That's a good point there. The welfare of the workers as well. So yeah, the zoo is not just made up of animals, it's also got people that work there, brilliant. From an economic perspective, the benefits of the zoo as a tool for education, definitely. How many people went? So yeah, thinking about it from that sort of angle, how was it organized? Well, I have a little bit of information actually about that. So the London Zoo here is the world's oldest scientific zoo. So when it first opened in 1828, it was managed by the London Zoological Society. And originally it was intended for scientific study. And it was only at some point in 1847, so quite a bit later, that you could, as a member of the public, you could go in without sort of special permission and paying 1 shilling. So that's the history of this particular zoo in Regent's Park that we're talking about. So that kind of relates to one of the points, in the chat. Melissa, yeah, laws on animal rights. So thinking about it from a legal perspective, very interesting. Yeah, how was it different from other zoos? Like what was the sort of zoo situation like at the time? Absolutely. How was it unique? We've just learned it was the world's oldest scientific zoo, so it's unique in that sense, but maybe there were other ways in which it was different. This is brilliant. I really did not anticipate so many responses in the chat. I'm really struggling to look through all of them. It is absolutely fantastic, everyone. Thank you so much for your reflections. Yeah, who went to the zoo? Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about it from a sort of class angle, maybe, because I would expect that the society was quite, perhaps at its conception, maybe it was quite elitist and only a few people were able to go to the zoo if it was originally set out as a sort of academic study purpose. Brilliant. This is incredible. Thank you so much, everyone. Impact on the population's knowledge in London about animals. Yeah, absolutely. And that's, like we had the temporal context idea before, we can think about this. I've just given you this example because it just so happened that that's what happened in 1828 on this day. But I hope we've started out with a great start. We've started out with an example that can have lots of different subject angles, right? We had law, sociology, then also thinking about it like in terms of ethics as well. And also science, the actual sort of biological science, the zoological science behind it. So some brilliant ideas. We also had economics as well, didn't we? Okay, this is my next one. On the 27th of April in 1981, the first integrated personal computer mouse was launched. I'm just looking around. Do I have a mouse near me? I don't. I don't have a prop. Oh, that's frustrating, but I have an image on my slide. So this is the first computer mouse that was launched, that was part of a personal computer system. So it was debuted by the Palo Alto Research Center, which is in California. And it was part of the technical word for the workstation, the computer system, was the Xerox Star, or the Xerox 8010 information system. And so what was innovative about this was that the mouse was this pointing object. What I also found out was that the way that we know a mouse to be is not the only way that they sort of conceived of the idea of a mouse. There was a head-mounted device. I didn't have time to go into detail about what that looked like, but I think that would be a really interesting angle to go down. But it was someone in 1964, Douglas Engelbart, who invented the sort of mouse that we're seeing today, the one that we're familiar with. It underwent many changes, but that sort of hand-operated device that we know, that was their idea. What I also found was how much it cost, not just the mouse, but the whole workstation. So when it was released on this day in 1981, the price of it was $16,500. So that's quite expensive. So I've given you lots of information there because I just found it really personally quite interesting. What do you think you could do in terms of your subject angle? And also where, you know, what you'd want to find out more about. Right, let me get to the first one about the mouse. Development of public education, yes, absolutely. So technology being used in the context of education. We've seen that definitely recently with, you know, Zoom and online school, absolutely. The actual computing behind it, definitely. So translating the motion into the data and sort of what that was like how that worked, how that came about, sort of the real technicality of it. You could definitely go down that route. Yeah, and the stylistic choice of the two buttons and the hand operated, absolutely, sort of the reasoning behind the development of this. Yeah, so you could take it from the other end, the evolution of technology, all the way to AI in the here and now, in the current day. You could do a really nice maybe comparison between these two events, you know, the birth of the computer mouse and the birth of ChatGPT maybe, and sort of how those are related, what that tells you about the society at the time. Absolutely. Yeah, what innovations in terms of hardware were required? Absolutely. The effect on the technological divide, it's a really interesting one. Thank you, Ahmed. Yes, so in terms of the accessibility, the access to this technology, that was the point I was trying to get across when I was talking about the price of this system, because it was the first thing that popped into my head. I thought, wow, gosh, I wonder how much that cost at the time, and I wonder how much it costs now. You know, it must be in a computing museum somewhere. Yeah, great one from Sophie Lee there. Like, think about it from a gender perspective. You know, were women involved in this? Was there a key female scientist or computer scientist that was involved that we don't hear much about? That's often the case with a lot of discoveries and inventions. Absolutely. What materials were used in it? Absolutely, very good. So just like before, we're thinking about zoo cages. Now we're thinking about computer mice. Was this the birth of the tech industry, Silicon Valley? Yeah, so I looked a little bit more into it, because there was this myth that one of the articles that I read was sort of debunking, that Steve Jobs came and saw this computer system, this workstation, and got the idea for something at Apple. But I think that the article was basically saying it wasn't quite like that. The story is almost too good to be true. But it wasn't actually until 1984 that the mouse was used in a widespread sense. So you can sort of track things like business and sales, as Anya said as well, sort of actual use in the public domain. This is brilliant. Again, we've got an absolute wealth of comments that I'm trying to get through. Oh, yeah, that's really interesting, Marcus. So was there an uptick in carpal tunnel post 1981? That's really interesting. Yeah. How has it impacted our intelligence? Yes, absolutely. Access to the web, like these sorts of products can be seen as sort of the starting point for other debates and other discussions in terms of just internet generally, and access to technology, as we were saying before. Brilliant. Yeah, so the cost, how it was revolutionary, how this technology is used in different fields. Absolutely. Brilliant. This is absolutely fantastic. What I will try and do is collate all of your comments. I'm going to make a note to remind myself to do this, because I think that would be really great if I could send that round in the post-session email next week. So I'm just making a note to do that, because some of these are absolutely fantastic. Excellent. Yeah, every single comment is just brilliant. I'm really appreciative. Okay, sorry, I realize we're coming close to time, so we might have to go a little bit speedier through these next ones. So this next one, the penultimate one, in 1992, on the 27th of April, Betty Boothroyd became the first female British politician to be elected as Speaker of the House of Commons. Had anyone heard of this person before today? I'm just interested to see. Got some no's, got some yeses. Yeah, no, it's really interesting to think about that as sort of an initial question, right? So what do you think your subject angle would be on this? And maybe also, where would you go next if you were sort of researching this as an event? What questions do you have about that? Yeah, her own background, how she came to politics, maybe. Yeah. Her role as a speaker at the time, yes, definitely. What I did find out was that when she was elected, she refused to wear the speaker's wig, and so that meant that the tradition was abolished. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So she had a significant impact in that sense. Yeah, excellent sort of secondary discussion question from Rachel. Does having women in politics, does having that representation encourage more young women, more girls to go into politics as a field? That's a really interesting question. I'm sure there'll be a lot of articles and documentaries and podcasts and things like that about that. Really good questions and thoughts here. Yeah, to what extent was she actually a role model for women in politics? Absolutely, because just being a female politician doesn't necessarily mean that that you're a sort of quote role model or feminist, does it? Yeah, at the time, in the context, what sort of changes, what was going on politically that related to women's health is the example here, but also other issues that relate to women as well. The response of the public, a really interesting one. Yeah. Like what was the headline, you know, in the different newspapers at the time? Sorry, I didn't actually think to do that. That would have been really good. I apologize for not thinking of that earlier. I just got a picture of her at the time. This is great. Okay, yeah. How Britain relates to other countries as well, and this as a milestone in itself, how that relates, but you know, let's put it in the context. Yeah, how was she received? Like, what was the impression amongst the people and also amongst her her peers, and her peers, I guess, in the House of Commons, House of Lords, things like that. What were her own political beliefs? Yeah, I found that she was a Labour candidate for West Bromwich. She also volunteered for Kennedy's presidential campaign as well. It's really interesting. This was all very new to me as well when I was researching this event. So yeah, it's really interesting for me. Sorry, I'm conscious of time. Excellent again. Like, I'm just so grateful for all your responses. Thank you so much. This is brilliant. So the final one before we wrap up today. Bit more recent present. So on the 27th of April in 2005, the A380 completed its first flight. So this is a type of jet, type of aeroplane. So I can tell you a little bit more about it to start us off. The passenger capacity in total was 840. It was called the Super Jumbo Airbus A380. The development of it began in secret in 1988. So quite a long time period for the development. It cost in total, the whole development program, about $25 billion. And there was something about the deliveries being late, which I found quite amusing. Logistically, these huge parts that make up the plane, they had to be transported by air themselves, across land, sea. This first flight that happened in 2005 on this day, there were only 6 passengers on board, so it must have been quite echoey in there. It was the pilots and the engineers themselves. And it was almost around a 4-hour flight. And then the first commercial flight was 2 years later. So what do we reckon? How would you, from your subject angle, approach this event? And what questions would you have about it as well? Let me have a look in the chat box. Scrolling up to the first one. So yeah, impact in terms of economic impact, but also environmental impact. That's a really common takeaway that I've seen so far. Globalization, the effect of flights on globalization. We saw the idea of flights in terms of the COVID pandemic as well, didn't we? So that might be a good sort of link that you could make there. Yeah, so all about making travel more accessible, but also the other side of that, global warming, the climate crisis. Yeah, definitely. Yes, sorry, how did this plane differ mechanically to previous ones? Yes, what made it unique? And I think mainly it was what I got from the internet is wingspan, height, and seating capacity. That was how it was sort of record breaking at the time. And I don't think it's I don't think it's in service anymore, this type of jet, but it had carried over 190 million passengers. One thing as well, I was looking at the sort of the different classes, like economy class, business class, first class, in a plane. The huge space of this plane really gave opportunity for that to take off. That was the impression I got from my research anyway. So I thought that was interesting, with talking earlier about a class angle as well. The structural challenges, yes. Yeah, how did it work sort of in terms of the computing systems as well? The creation of jobs through the development of huge planes, yeah, absolutely. Interesting thinking about it from a mathematical angle, like minimum volume of fuel required to take a fixed length of flight, like how was that calculated? Yeah, that's a really, going back to the basic idea of this being the first flight. That's brilliant. Relating it to the first flying machine, yes, absolutely, the Wright brothers, brilliant. How many trips total did it complete? Yeah. Public attitudes to flying. I saw someone mention earlier about a post 9/11 world, like attitudes to flying and getting on a plane. So public skepticism at the time about flying, that might be something you could look further into. This is fantastic. Thank you again, everyone. These have been brilliant responses. I hope what you have learned today, sorry for going slightly over time there, I think. I hope what you've learned today is that you can do this on your own. So I had a lot of fun preparing these slides, looking at all of those whathappenedonThisday.com websites and delving deeper, following the thread. So it can be just exactly like this. You can take current events, you can take events that happened on this particular day, whatever it might be, whatever's your starting point, you're coming at it from, as we've seen, a subject specific angle. But also what I really liked was that you weren't thinking about it just from one subject. You know, all of those comments, they were really quite interdisciplinary. They were thinking about these real events in the context of the multiple different subjects that could have, you know, something to say about them. So that sort of real world context of your subjects is a really great habit to get into discussing and talking about. So that was absolutely fantastic. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did. So yeah, that's all I have for you. I would be really interested to know in the chat, just in the final minute or so, if you can stay, what your next steps are going to be. So are you thinking back to our study skills half in the first portion of the session, but also about supercurriculars? If you could pop in the chat what you're going to do off the back of coming to this session today, what is your next step? Rachel, poster competition, brilliant, thank you. I'd forgotten about the poster competition, thank you very much. Try a different learning style, brilliant. Start a journal for supercurriculars, yep, great. Read more articles, look at some courses on Future Learn. Excellent. Yeah, thinking about like drafting a personal statement paragraph, great. Reading around your subject, wider reading, watching more TED Talks, having a look at CAM guides. Yeah, that's a really great resource. I don't talk enough about it. It's really brilliant. Excellent. That looks like some great next steps. Thank you everyone so much. I'm going to try and get Zoom to save this chat for me. So hopefully I'll be able to summarize all of your thoughts and your discussions in the chat box for you in the wrap-up email. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely evening. Bye.